I am 28 years old, a woman, and for my entire life, I have been the family peacemaker. It was a role I never asked for, but one that was assigned to me the moment my younger sister, Sophia, was born. She was the brilliant one, the exciting one. I was the quiet one, the steady one, the one who was expected to smooth things over, to absorb the tension, to make sure everyone else was comfortable, often at my own expense. My father, Richard, was a man who valued appearances above all else. He was the CEO of a moderately successful manufacturing company, a big fish in a small pond, and he expected his family to reflect his status. Sophia, with her law degree and her sharp, ambitious nature, fit that image perfectly. I, a librarian with a love for quiet evenings and old books, did not. The tension had been building for years. A low hum beneath the surface of every family dinner, every holiday gathering. My stepmother, Brenda, who married my father after my mother passed away, was a master of the backhanded compliment. She would praise my simple life in a way that made it sound like a failing. Sophia would talk about her latest courtroom victory or her expensive new car, and my father would beam with pride. Then all eyes would turn to me, and the unspoken question would hang in the air. And what have you done? I usually just smiled and changed the subject. It was easier that way. Keeping the peace was my job. It was the only way I knew how to navigate the choppy waters of my own family. I thought that if I was agreeable enough, if I caused no trouble, they would eventually just accept me for who I was. I was wrong. The peace I worked so hard to maintain was a fragile thing, and it was about to be shattered in the most public and humiliating way imaginable. The event was my father's retirement party. It was exactly as grand and ostentatious as I had expected. A ballroom at the fanciest hotel in town, hundreds of guests in tuxedos and evening gowns, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. It was a monument to his ego, a final performance before he stepped down from his company. I stood near a pillar, nursing a glass of sparkling water, feeling like a ghost at the feast. I had told my family I was my father's leadership and vision. He soaked it all in, a king holding court. Finally, it was his turn. He walked to the podium, a glass of champagne in his hand, and the room fell silent. He thanked his colleagues, his friends, his beautiful wife, Brenda. Then he turned his attention to his children. "To my daughter, Sophia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My brilliant, driven, beautiful girl. You have made me prouder than you will ever know. Following in my footsteps at the company, you are the future, my legacy." Sophia preened, blowing him a kiss from her seat at the head table. I felt the familiar pang of invisibility. I braced myself for a brief, dismissive mention. But what came next was not what I expected. His eyes found me across the room, and his expression hardened. The warmth vanished, replaced by a cold, appraising look. "And to my other daughter, Clara," he began, his voice suddenly loud and clear, carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom. I felt 100 pairs of eyes turned towards me. My face grew hot. "I hope one day you learn the value of ambition," he continued, his words like stones. "I have tried to inspire you, to push you, but it seems some people are content to simply float through life. Well, I am a man who believes in motivation." He paused for dramatic effect, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "So to help you find that motivation, I am announcing tonight, in front of everyone who matters, that I am cutting you out of my will. Entirely." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket of shock and second-hand embarrassment. I could feel the stares of all these people, my father's friends and colleagues, boring into me. I saw pity on some faces, morbid curiosity on others. At the head table, Sophia was looking down at her lap, but I could see the corner of her mouth twitching into a smile. Brenda had a look of pure, undisguised triumph. This was what they wanted. This was the victory they had been working towards. My father stood at the podium, basking in the power of his proclamation, waiting for my reaction. He expected tears. He expected me to run from the room in shame. He expected a scene. Knew I was done being their punching bag. I would not cry. I would not run. I lifted my chin and met my father's gaze across the room. I gave him a slow, deliberate nod, a silent acknowledgement. Message received. The moment stretched on, feeling like an eternity. The string quartet, sensing the awkwardness, hesitantly started to play again. A low murmur rippled through the crowd as people started whispering to their neighbors. My father, seemingly satisfied with the devastation he had caused, raised his glass. "To the future," he declared, though his eyes were still locked on me. A few people echoed the toast half-heartedly. The party was broken. The celebratory atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by a thick cloud of social discomfort. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole, but I remained rooted to the spot, my posture rigid, my expression a blank mask. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. Not here. Not now. Just as I was contemplating how to make a graceful exit without looking like I was fleeing, the grand double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. A man stepped inside, looking around the room as if searching for someone. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit, with an air of quiet confidence that immediately drew attention. His eyes scanned the crowd, and then they found me. A warm, genuine smile lit up his face, a beacon in the cold sea of the party. It was Liam. My Liam. He started walking towards me, his gaze never leaving mine, completely oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. He had no idea he was walking into a war zone. His arrival caused a new stir. People turned to look at this newcomer who carried himself with such effortless authority. As he got closer, I saw my father's business partner, a man named Mr. Thompson, who was standing near the bar, do a double-take. His eyes widened and his jaw literally dropped. "Mr. Sterling," he muttered, loud enough for those around him to hear. "What on earth is he doing here?" My father, who had started to make his way from the podium to receive congratulations, stopped dead in his tracks. He looked over at the approaching man, a frown of confusion on his face. Brenda and Sophie together, in his head. Mr. Thompson, however, looked like he had seen a ghost. He was practically bowing. "Mr. Sterling, sir, I had no idea you would be in attendance." My father's eyes narrowed. "Sterling?" he repeated, the name obviously meaning something to him. "As in, Sterling Capital?" Liam finally turned his attention away from me. He gave a polite, professional nod to the two older men. "That's right," he confirmed calmly. "Liam Sterling." He then wrapped his arm more firmly around my waist and looked back at me, presenting me to them as if I were a queen. "And this is my wonderful girlfriend, Clara." The name of the company, Sterling Capital, hung in the air. I knew it sounded familiar, but in my daze I could not place it. But my father knew. Oh, he knew. The color drained from his face. He looked as if he had been punched in the stomach. Brenda and Sophia, who had drifted closer, looked utterly bewildered. Sterling Capital. The name finally clicked into place. It was the massive, multinational investment firm that had been in the news for weeks. They were known for acquiring and restructuring companies. And just last week, they had completed a hostile takeover of the larger corporation that my father's company had been desperate to partner with for over a decade. Securing that partnership was meant to be the crowning achievement of my father's career, the deal that would cement his legacy. He had failed to close it before he retired, a source of deep frustration for him. And Liam, my Liam, was not just some employee. He was Liam Sterling, the Sterling, the man whose firm now effectively owned his old company, the man who held my father's entire professional legacy in the palm of his hand. The shift in the room was palpable. It was like a change in atmospheric pressure. The whispers that had been about my humiliation now turned into frantic, excited murmurs about Liam's presence. My father stood there, speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Brenda's perfectly painted smile was gone, replaced by a mask of shocked calculation. Sophia looked from Liam to me with an expression of pure, unadulterated disbelief. They had just publicly disowned me, cast me out as a worthless failure. And now, standing with his arm around me, was irrevocably. "You could say that," I whispered back to Liam. My father was just giving a speech. My father finally found his voice, though it was a strained, croaking version of his usual booming tone. "You're Liam Sterling?" he stammered, as if saying the name aloud might make it less real. Liam nodded, his expression polite but unreadable. "I am," he said. "And you must be Richard, Clara's father." He extended a hand, the gesture smooth and professional. "She's told me so much about you." The words were simple, but they dripped with a chilling courtesy. My father stared at Liam's outstretched hand for a second too long before shaking it weakly. His eyes darted around the room, seeing all his guests watching this exchange with rapt attention. He was trapped. He had built this stage to humiliate me, and now he was the one pinned under the spotlight. Brenda, ever the opportunist, recovered first. She forced a dazzling, brittle smile onto her face and glided forward. "Well, what a wonderful surprise!" she chirped, her voice a few notes too high. "Clara, you sly thing, you never told us your new young man was so accomplished." She looked Liam up and down, her eyes assessing his suit, his watch, his very presence. I could almost see the dollar signs clicking behind her pupils. I felt a surge of disgust. I introduced them formally. "Liam, this is my stepmother, Brenda, and my sister, Sophia." Liam was the picture of civility. He shook their hands, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. "A pleasure," he said, his tone perfectly neutral. Sophia, for her part, looked like a deer in the headlights. Her usual sharp wit and condescending smirk were gone, replaced by a wide-eyed stare. She was trying to process how her quiet, boring older sister had landed someone like Liam Sterling. My father cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "Well," he said, forcing a hearty laugh that sounded more like a cough, "it seems we have a celebrity in our midst." He gestured vaguely at the room. "My retirement party." He was trying to reassert his position as the host, the man of the hour. It was a pathetic attempt. Liam just nodded. "Look fatherly and affectionate, but felt like a brand." I flinched. Liam's arm tightened around me protectively. I looked my father dead in the eye. The cold resolve I had felt earlier was now a solid core of ice. "Was it a joke, Dad?" I asked, my voice quiet but clear. "Because it did not sound like a joke. It sounded like you meant every single word." His face flushed. He was not used to being challenged, especially not by me. "Now, Clara," he said, his tone shifting to one of paternalistic warning. "Don't be dramatic." Brenda jumped in to support him. "Your father was just trying to motivate you, dear. He wants what's best for you." I turned my cold gaze on her. Humiliating me in front of 200 people is what's best for me? Sophia, finding her voice at last, decided to take a different tack. She stepped forward, putting on her most charming smile, and addressed Liam directly, completely ignoring me. "So, Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "I'm a lawyer with the company. I've been handling our merger negotiations. Perhaps you and I could have a chat about the future of the firm." It was a blatant power play, an attempt to cut me out and establish a direct line to him. Liam did not even look at her. His eyes were still on me, his expression one of growing anger on my behalf. "I don't discuss business at social events," he said, his voice flat and dismissive. "Besides, I'm here with Clara." He then looked at me, his voice softening. "This party seems a little tense. Would you like to leave?" The offer was a lifeline. It was a way out of this suffocating room, away from these toxic people. I had never felt more grateful for him than I did in that moment. "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "I would love to leave." We turned to go, a united front. My father panicked. "Wait!" he called out, his voice desperate. "You can't go yet. People will want to meet you." He meant, I want people to see me with you. I need this connection to save face. We did not stop. We walked through the crowd, which parted for us like the Red Sea. I could feel every eye on my back. I could hear the frantic whispers erupting in our wake. That's his daughter? The one he just disinherited? The tears I had been holding back started to well up in my eyes. The full weight of what had happened crashed down on me. The cruelty of it, the public nature of the shaming. Liam led me to a small, secluded alcove with a plush bench. He sat me down and knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. "Talk to me, Clara," he said gently. "What happened in there before I arrived?" I took a shaky breath, and the whole story came tumbling out. I told him about the speech, about the words my father used, about the looks on Brenda's and Sophia's faces. I told him about the years of being made to feel small, of being the family disappointment, of my constant, fruitless efforts to win his approval. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every word I spoke. He did not say, "I'm sure he didn't mean it," or "maybe you misunderstood." He just listened, and he believed me. When I finished, my voice choked with tears, he gently wiped my cheek with his thumb. "I am so sorry, Clara," he said, his voice filled with a quiet fury. "No one should ever be treated like that. Especially not by their own father." The simple validation, the unconditional support, was everything I needed in that moment. It was a stark contrast to the conditional, transactional love I had received from my own family my whole life. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why would he do that? Why in front of everyone?" Liam sighed, a deep, weary sound. "From what I've seen of men like your father in my line of work," he said, choosing his words carefully, "everything is about power and image. Humiliating you was a power play. It was his way of showing his world that he was in control, that he could discard anyone who didn't fit his perfect picture." I nodded, a fresh wave of hurt washing over me. I was an embarrassment to him. My quiet life, my job, it wasn't good enough. "There is nothing wrong with your life, Clara," Liam said fiercely. "You are kind and intelligent, and you have more integrity in your little finger than that man has in his entire body." We sat in silence for a few minutes while I collected myself. The anger was starting to replace the hurt. A cold, hard and resistant to change and more concerned with personal prestige than with the company's long-term health. "I didn't want to taint your view of him or make things awkward between us." He paused. "But I have to admit, seeing him in action tonight, the reports were accurate. I just never imagined he could be so cruel on a personal level." The knowledge that Liam had already seen the truth of my father's character, even before this, was strangely comforting. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't just being overly sensitive. The man really was a monster. As we finally stood up to leave the hotel, my phone started buzzing in my purse. I pulled it out. It was my father. I declined the call. A second later, it buzzed again. My father again. I declined it and blocked the number. Then a text message came through from an unknown number. It was him. "Clara, pick up the phone. We need to talk. This is a huge misunderstanding." I deleted the message without replying. Let him stew in the mess he created. As we walked out into the cool night air, Liam's driver pulled the car around. Inside the quiet luxury of the vehicle, I finally felt safe. I felt like I could breathe. The party was a nightmare, but Liam's arrival had changed everything. It had been an accidental checkmate. My father had tried to take away my future, my inheritance. But in doing so, he had handed me a weapon I never knew I had. And I was starting to think I might be ready to use it. The next day, my phone was a constant source of buzzing. A barrage of calls and texts from my father, from Brenda, even from Sophia. I ignored them all. I needed space. I needed to think. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a simmering rage. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry they got caught. They were sorry their chosen victim turned out to be connected to someone so powerful. Their frantic attempts to contact me were not born of remorse, but of pure, unadulterated panic. They weren't trying to fix our relationship. They were trying to perform damage control. I spent the morning with Liam, just sitting in his quiet apartment, drinking coffee and trying to process everything. He was a rock, solid and unwavering in his support. He didn't push me to talk, but he was there when I needed to vent. What do they want? Sidelines of family conflicts, not wanting to make waves. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. Clara? Oh, honey, are you all right? Her voice was filled with genuine concern. I'm okay, Aunt Carol, I said, my voice a little shaky. I am so sorry about what Richard did. It was a monstrous thing to do. I have never been so ashamed of him in my life. Her words were a balm. To hear a family member validate my feelings, to call his behavior what it was, meant the world to me. After you left, she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. It was awful. He tried to pretend it was a joke, but no one was buying it. Not after your young man showed up. Everyone was talking. Richard looked like he was going to be sick. He and Brenda and Sophia had a huge, quiet argument right there at the table. She paused, and I could hear her take a deep breath. Clara, there's something else you need to know. This wasn't just your father being cruel on a whim. Brenda and Sophia have been in his ear for months. They've been pushing him to cut you out. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Why? I asked, though I think I already knew the answer. Money. They told him a story, Aunt Carol said, her voice laced with disgust. They convinced him that you were secretly draining the small trust fund your grandmother left for you and Sophia. They said you were being irresponsible with it, and that you were going to squander it all before they could get their hands on it. I was stunned into silence. My grandmother had left a modest trust for the two of us, to be accessed when we turned 30. Sophia was already 30, but I was still 2 years away. I had never touched a penny of it. I hadn't even thought about it. It was a complete and utter lie. They made it all up, I whispered. Of course they did, Aunt Carol said fiercely. They wanted it all for Sophia. They saw you as an obstacle. Convincing your father to disinherit you was their way of clearing the path. The public announcement was just Brenda's flair for the dramatic. She wanted to humiliate you at the same time. The pieces all clicked into place. This was not just a spontaneous act of cruelty from my father. This was a premeditated attack, a conspiracy orchestrated by my stepmother and my sick call. I relayed the entire conversation to Liam. He listened intently, his jaw tightening. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. A trust fund, you said. From your grandmother? He asked. Yes, I replied. It's managed by a small local bank. Do you know which one? He asked. I told him the name. He pulled out his laptop and started typing. What are you doing? I asked. Your family is accusing you of financial misconduct, he said, his eyes focused on the screen. Let's see if we can find any actual financial misconduct. My company, Sterling Capital, now owns the parent corporation of your father's old firm. As the new owners, we have the right to conduct a full and thorough audit of their books. Every expense, every invoice, every contract for the last 5 years. A slow smile spread across my face. You think they're hiding something? I asked. People who lie about money are often hiding their own secrets about money, he said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Your father ran that company like his own personal kingdom for 30 years. Your sister, the lawyer, worked there. Your stepmother enjoys a very lavish lifestyle. It's not a stretch to think there might be some irregularities, especially if they were worried about a potential merger making their books public. He looked up from his screen and met my eyes. They tried to hurt you by using lies about money. It seems only fitting that we use the truth about money to respond. The idea was terrifying and exhilarating all at the same time. For my entire life, I had played defense. I had reacted, absorbed, and retreated. The thought of going on the offensive, of fighting back, was a foreign concept. But the anger Aunt Carol's revelation had ignited was burning too brightly to ignore. They had drawn a line. They had declared war. They just didn't realize that this time, I wasn't fighting alone. Liam made a few quiet phone calls to his legal and accounting teams. His instructions were simple and direct. I want a full forensic audit of Richard's company, effective immediately. I want you to focus on the last 3 years. Pay special attention to consulting fees, executive expense accounts, and any transactions involving family members. He listened for a moment, then said, "Yes, I am aware it is a Sunday. This is ready to discuss this. Do not contact me again until then." The calls and texts from him, Brenda, and Sophia stopped almost immediately. My message, with its cold, formal tone, had clearly unnerved them. It was a power move, a small one, but it felt good. It felt like I was finally taking back a tiny piece of the control they had always held over me. I spent the rest of the night in a state of nervous anticipation. Liam was wonderful. He ordered in our favorite food, put on a movie, and did his best to distract me. But my thoughts kept drifting back to the audit, to the secrets that might be hidden in the company's financial records. I was on the verge of uncovering something. I could feel it. I was either about to find the weapon I needed to defend myself, or I was about to find nothing and be left with only my anger and my hurt. The next morning, an email with a password-protected file arrived in Liam's inbox. The subject line was simple: Preliminary Report. Liam opened it on his laptop and turned the screen towards me. "Are you ready?" he asked. I took a deep breath and nodded. My heart was pounding. The report was dense, full of spreadsheets and financial jargon. But Liam quickly navigated to a summary section prepared by the head auditor. And there it was, in black and white. For the past 2 years, my father's company had been paying a substantial monthly retainer to an outside consulting firm. The invoices were for strategic legal services and corporate advisement. The total amount paid to this firm was staggering, well over $500,000. "That seems excessive for a company of that size," Liam murmured, scrolling through the details. "Let's see who owns this consulting firm." He clicked on a link that brought up the firm's incorporation documents. My breath caught in my throat. The consulting firm, a registered LLC, had only one owner listed: Sophia, my sister. My perfect, brilliant lawyer sister had created a shell company and had been billing our father's firm for hundreds of thousands of dollars in bogus consulting fees. And my father had been approving every single payment. It was embezzlement, plain and simple. They had been systematically stealing from the company. "Oh my God," I whispered, staring at the screen in disbelief. Accusing me of the very thing they were doing on a much grander scale. The revelation was nauseating. This went so far beyond family drama. This was a calculated criminal conspiracy. They had wanted me out of the picture, disinherited and discredited, so that I would never be in a position to ask questions. If I was on the outside, I would have no standing to look into the family finances or the company's business. They were trying to silence me before I could ever discover their secret. What was the money for? I wondered aloud, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and shock. Liam pointed to another section of the report. According to public records, Sophia purchased a new luxury condominium downtown about 18 months ago. She paid for it in cash. And your father and Brenda just finished a major renovation on their house, including a new swimming pool and a tennis court. It was all there. They had been funding their lavish lifestyle with stolen money. I felt a wave of dizziness. My own family, my father and my sister, they were thieves, and they had tried to destroy my reputation to cover their tracks. The hurt I had felt at the party was now dwarfed by a profound sense of betrayal. This was not just about favoritism or a lack of love. This was about a fundamental corruption at the core of my family. Liam closed the laptop. "So," he said, his voice calm and steady in the face of my turmoil, "we have a choice to make. This report, and the evidence it contains, is more than enough to press criminal charges. We could hand this over to the district attorney, and your father and sister would almost certainly go to jail." The thought of my father and sister in prison was a shocking one. As much as they had hurt me, the idea of being responsible for their incarceration was deeply unsettling. "What's the other choice?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Liam looked at me, his eyes full of understanding. "The other choice," he said, is that we use this information as leverage. We don't go to the authorities, we go to them. We lay out the evidence, and we let them know that we know everything. And then, you get to set the terms. You get to decide what happens next. You hold all the power now, Clara. The idea began to take shape in my mind. I didn't want revenge in the form of a prison sentence. That felt too final, too destructive. I want to watch their faces when I tell them that I know. A grim smile touched Liam's lips. I think that can be arranged, he said. I picked up my phone and sent a new text message to my father. Family meeting, your house, tomorrow at noon. Be there. His reply came back in less than 30 seconds. Of course. We will be there. He thought he was getting what he wanted. He thought this was his chance to smooth things over, to manipulate me back into silence. He had no idea he was walking into a trap of his own making. The peacemaker was gone. In her place was someone he had never met before, someone who was ready to burn it all down to get to the truth. The drive to my father's house the next day was surreal. I sat in the passenger seat of Liam's car, a folder of printed documents from the audit report resting on my lap. It was mostly for show. The real evidence was digital and secure, but the physical weight of the folder felt symbolic. It was the weight of their lies, their secrets, and now, my power. I was surprisingly calm. The fear and hurt had been burned away by the cold fire of my anger. I knew what I had to do. Liam glanced over at me. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Ready," I said, and I was surprised to find that it was the truth. For the first time in my life, I was walking into a confrontation with my family without any intention of backing down or smoothing things over. I was there to win. They were all waiting for us in the formal living room, the one reserved for important guests. My father, Brenda, and Sophia were sitting together on one of the ornate sofas, a united front of fake contrition. They stood up as we entered. My father stepped forward, his hand outstretched, a practiced, charming smile on his face. "Clara, Liam, thank you for coming. I'm so glad we can clear the air about this whole unfortunate business." I ignored his hand. I walked past him and sat down in the large armchair opposite them, placing the folder pointedly on the coffee table. Liam sat in the chair beside me. The room was silent for a moment, the four of them looking at us, waiting for me to speak. "There's been no misunderstanding, Dad," I began, my voice even and steady. "Let's not start this conversation." Sophia, who had been silent until now, scoffed. "Criminal activity? Don't be ridiculous, Clara. You're being overly dramatic." "Am I?" I asked, leaning forward and tapping the folder on the table. "I know about the consulting firm, Sophia." Absolute, dead silence. The color drained from Sophia's face. My father looked utterly bewildered, as if I had suddenly started speaking in a foreign language. Brenda just stared, her eyes wide with panic. I don't know what you're talking about," Sophia stammered, her lawyerly composure crumbling. "Oh, I think you do," I said, my voice like ice. "The one you own. The one that's been billing this family's company for over $500,000 in fraudulent legal fees for the past 2 years. My father finally exploded. "That's a legitimate business expense," he blustered, his face turning a blotchy red. "Sophia has been providing valuable counsel to the company for years." "Really?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Is that what you call it? Funneling company money into a shell corporation to pay for your new condo, Sophia? To pay for this house's new tennis court, Brenda? Liam's company, the one that now owns your old firm, has a different name for it. They call it embezzlement." Brenda gasped, putting a hand to her chest in a theatrical gesture of shock. "How dare you? How dare you accuse your father and your sister of such a thing?" "I'm not accusing," I said calmly. "I'm stating a fact. The auditors at Sterling Capital are very, very good at their jobs. They found everything. The invoices, the bank transfers, the incorporation papers for Sophia's little firm. It's all right here." I patted the folder again. They didn't know it was mostly blank paper, but the effect was the same. Sophia, seeing her life and career flashing before her eyes, finally cracked. "This is because of him, isn't it?" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Liam. "Your new rich boyfriend. He put you up to this. He's trying to ruin us." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "No, Sophia. You did this to yourselves. You and Dad and Brenda. You tried to ruin me. You lied about me stealing from Grandma's trust fund. You painted me as a thief to justify cutting." "Don't care. The money will be returned." They stared at me, aghast. "Second," I continued, "you, Dad, are going to personally call every single key person who was at that party. You are going to tell them that your announcement was a disgusting, horrible mistake. You are going to apologize for your behavior, and you are going to state, for the record, that I am your beloved daughter and a primary heir to your estate. Third," I said, my eyes locking with his, "you are going to call your lawyer, today, and you are going to have the will amended. You will reinstate me, and my portion will be equal to Sophia's. My lawyer will be present to witness the signing." Finally, I looked at all three of them, my gaze hard as stone. "And fourth, from this day forward, you will never speak another ill word about me to anyone. You will treat me, and you will treat Liam, with respect. You will be civil, you will be polite. And you will remember, every single time you see me, that I know what you did." I leaned back in my chair. "Those are my terms. You will agree to all of them. Or," I paused, letting the alternative sink in, "I can have Liam walk out of this house right now and hand his audit report over to the board of directors and the district attorney's office. The choice is yours, but you will make it now." It was checkmate, and they knew it. The aftermath was quiet and humiliating for them, which was exactly what I wanted. There was no more yelling, no more blustering, just a grim, defeated acceptance. My father, looking older and more frail than I had ever seen him, picked up his phone and began making the calls. I sat and listened as he, his voice cracking with shame, apologized to his business partners, his friends, the people whose respect he valued above all else. He stumbled through the script I had given him, explaining that his words about me were a terrible mistake born of stress, and that I was, and always would be, his cherished daughter and heir. Each call was a small death to his ego. Brenda sat beside him, pale and silent, her dreams of a lavish, work-free life crumbling around her. Sophia had retreated to a corner of the room, weeping silently, her brilliant future now tarnished and her freedom hanging by a thread. The lawyers were called, and emerged a long, slow whistle. "Good for you, Clara," she said, her voice filled with an admiration I had never heard from her before. "It's about time someone in this family stood up to Richard. Your mother would be so, so proud of you." Her words meant more to me than any inheritance ever could. I also met my best friend Chloe for coffee. As I recounted the entire saga, her eyes grew wider and wider. When I got to the part about my demands, she let out a whoop of joy right there in the middle of the coffee shop. "Yes!" she cheered, grabbing my hands across the table. "You took back your power. You faced the dragons and you won. I am so incredibly proud of you." Life settled into a new, strange normal. The relationship with my family was, of course, forever changed. It was no longer a relationship based on a desperate, one-sided need for approval. It was now a tense, fragile truce, governed by the knowledge of what I held over them. We saw them at obligatory family events, like holidays and birthdays. The atmosphere was always thick with unspoken resentment, but they were impeccably polite. Brenda would compliment my dress through gritted teeth. Sophia would ask about my work with a forced, empty smile. My father would talk about the weather, avoiding my eyes. They were performing civility, and they knew that I knew it was just a performance. At Christmas that year, we were all gathered at my father's house. The grand decorations and forced cheer felt hollow. My father tried to make a joke, one of his old, booming pronouncements that used to command the attention of the whole room. This time, no one laughed. The joke fell flat, landing with a thud in the awkward silence. He looked around the room, a flicker of confusion and desperation in his eyes. He looked small, defeated. He had lost his audience. He had lost his power. Brenda was fussing with the table settings, her movements jerky and anxious. Sophia was staring into her phone, pretending to be absorbed in something, anything, other than being in that room. Liam reached under the table and squeezed my hand. I looked at him, and he gave me a small, supportive smile. In that moment, I realized the full scope of my victory. It wasn't about the money and the will. It wasn't even about the apology.